Before American cities became skylines, subways, office towers, restaurants, and apartment buildings, they had a much more basic problem. The water could kill you. Not in some dramatic disaster movie way, in a normal, everyday, just pour it into a glass kind of way. For much of the 1800s, American cities were growing faster than their infrastructure. People moved in for factory jobs, ports, railroads, shops, and wages. But every new person also created waste. And human waste, horse waste, garbage waste, industrial runoff, slaughterhouse waste, and dirty street water all had to go somewhere. Very often, that somewhere was close to the same water people drank. That is the hidden problem of a modern city. A city can build factories, it can build banks, it can build railroads, it can stack people into tenements and call it progress. But if the drinking water is contaminated with sewage, the city is not really modern. It's just crowded, and crowded was deadly. Diseases like cholera, typhoid fever, and dysentery thrived in the old urban world. These were not rare background problems. They were part of the danger of living in dense cities before modern sanitation. Cholera was especially terrifying because it could move fast. A person could seem healthy, then became violently sick, and then die in a short period of time. Cities experienced outbreaks in waves, and when they came, people often didn't know exactly what to blame. For a long time, many Americans believed disease came from bad air, rotting smells, or general filth of the city. This was called the miasma theory, and it was not hard to understand why people believed it. Cities smelled awful. Streets were filled with manure from horses, privies leaked, and garbage rotted. Rivers were used like drains. But the smell was not the main killer. The real danger was often invisible. A glass of water could look clear and still carry the disease. That was the terrifying part. The old city did not just have dirty streets, it had a broken relationship between waste and drinking water. And once cities became dense enough, the problem became impossible to ignore. New York is one of the clearest examples. In the early 1800s, New York was growing into the commercial capital of the United States, but its water supply was a mess. Wells were contaminated, fires were dangerous because the city did not have enough reliable water pressure, and disease outbreaks exposed the weakness of the system. So New York built the Croton Aqueduct. When Croton water reached the city in 1842, it was treated like a civic miracle. Water flowed by gravity from upstate into the city, bringing a large, reliable supply of cleaner water. It was not a modern treatment in the way that we think of it now, but it was a major step. The city was no longer depending only on local wells and polluted sources. And that is the first lesson. Modern cities did not begin with skyscrapers. They began with water systems. But bringing in cleaner water was only half the battle. Because if the city brings clean water in, but lets waste pile up, seep into the ground, or drain into nearby rivers, it has only moved the problem around. The real revolution was separating the water people drank from the waste that they produced. And that required pipes, sewers, reservoirs, pumps, aqueducts, treatment plants, public health departments, engineers, taxes, laws, and a completely different idea of what government was supposed to do. Clean water was not just a technology, it was a public system. And that system had to be built city by city. The sewer side of the story was messy from the beginning. Early cities relied on privies, cesspools, gutters, and local drainage. Some waste soaked into the ground, and some washed into streams. Some was just carted away, and some just stayed too close to people. Then cities began building sewers. But early sewers often created another problem. They could move waste out of the neighborhood, but into a river, harbor, or lake that another community depended on. In other words, cities learned how to move filth before they learned how to truly neutralize it. That's why the history of clean water is not just people-built pipes. It's a history of learning that every pipe has a destination. Flush waste away from one place, and it has to emerge somewhere else. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, cities began moving from emergency responses to permanent infrastructure. They were no longer just reacting to outbreaks, they were trying to prevent them. And one key step was filtration. In 1893, Lawrence, Massachusetts became a landmark early American example of municipal slow sand filtration. The city used filtration to clean water from the Merrimack River, and the results helped convince other cities that water could be engineered into something safer. Philadelphia gives the story scale. At the end of the 1800s, Philadelphia was still drawing much of its drinking water from rivers that were also receiving sewage from upstream communities. Typhoid fever was a constant threat. And then, in the early 1900s, the city built a massive filtration system. Typhoid fever rates eventually fell by more than 90%, and by the 1930s, typhoid deaths in the city had become rare. That's the part that people miss. Water treatment was not just nicer plumbing. It changed the odds of survival. According to the CDC, typhoid fever in the United States occurred about 100 cases per 100,000 in 1900. But by 1920, after filtration and chlorination had spread, that had fallen to 33.8 cases per 100,000. That is not a small improvement. It is a sign that the city itself was being rebuilt into something safer. But filtration was not the only breakthrough. The other major weapon was that chlorine. Today, chlorinated water sounds normal, maybe even boring. But at the time, the idea of adding a chemical to drinking water sounded suspicious, even dangerous. People wanted pure water, not chemically treated water. That resistance matters because it shows how strange modern public health looked when it was new. A city could tell people, "We are adding a chemical to your drinking water to make it safer." And many people would only hear the first half of that sentence. Chemical. Drinking water. No thank you. The trick was proving that a tiny controlled amount of disinfectant could make the water safer, not worse. The landmark American case came in Jersey City. In 1908, Dr. John L. Leal helped pioneer continuous chlorination of a U.S. drinking water supply for Jersey City, New Jersey. The system used chlorine compounds to disinfect the water from the Boonton River, and it was controversial enough that it ended up being defended in court, but it worked. And once cities saw the results, the idea spread quickly. Chlorination helped turn drinking water from a gamble into a managed public utility. It also changed the scale of what cities could become. A village could survive with wells, privies, and local habits. A city of hundreds of thousands or millions could not. Density made old sanitation practices deadly. If you wanted an apartment building, factory, school, streetcars, hospitals, and crowded neighborhoods, you needed infrastructure underneath all of it. That's why sewers matter just as much as clean water. Because the modern city needed two separate systems at once. One system to bring safe water in, and another system to carry dangerous waste away. Chicago understood this in the most extreme way possible. Chicago took its drinking water from Lake Michigan, but the Chicago River carried waste toward that same lake. In other words, the city's growth was threatening its own water supply. So Chicago did something almost absurd. It reversed the river. In 1900, Chicago completed the sanitary and ship canal, reversing the flow of the Chicago River so wastewater moved away from Lake Michigan instead of toward it. The Metropolitan Water Reclamation District says the goal was to take wastewater away from the lake and protect the region's drinking water source. Think about what that means in practical terms. The city did not just build a pipe, it changed a river because the old geography no longer worked for a modern metropolis. This is how serious the problem was. Chicago had become powerful, rich, and important, but it still had to solve the ancient problem of not drinking its own waste. And Chicago was not alone. Across the country, cities had to make some basic transitions in different ways. They had to gather water from cleaner sources, move it through engineered systems, filter it, disinfect it, store it, pressurize it, and deliver it to homes and businesses. Then they had to collect the waste, remove it from neighborhoods, and eventually treat it so the same cycle did not simply poison the city downstream. This is the real story of urban modernization. It was not glamorous. It was not a single inventor holding up a light bulb. It was miles of pipes, tunnels, pumps, filters, drains, canals, reservoirs, and treatment systems most people would never see. But those invisible systems changed life more than almost anything above ground. Researchers David Cutler and Grant Miller studied 13 major American cities from 1900 to 1936 and found that clean water technologies accounted for about 43% of the total mortality decline. One summary of their work estimated that infant mortality in those cities dropped 62% as a result of clean water. That is the real weight of the story. Clean water did not just make cities more pleasant, it helped cities stop being disease machines. It made dense life more stable, and it made factories easier to staff. It made schools safer. It made apartment living less dangerous, and it made urban childhood more survivable. It gave the cities the ability to keep growing without every growth wave bringing the same level of disease risk. And it exposed something important about progress. People usually remember the visible parts of modernization. The bridges, the trains, the steel mills, the skyscrapers, the cars, and the electric lights. But many of the most important inventions are hidden. You turn the handle, and clean water comes out. You flush, and the waste disappears. That feels ordinary now, but it's one of the most complicated achievements in American history. Because none of it was natural. Cities had to decide that water was not just a private problem. Sewage was not just a household problem. Disease was not just bad luck. These were public problems that required public systems. And when those systems worked, people stopped noticing them. That is the strange success of cleaner water. The better it works, the more invisible it becomes. But take it away, and the modern city stops being modern very quickly.